Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to do part 2 in Symphony of Cute Animals, this cute little couple dining. If you missed it, I will post in the description box below part 1 so that you can catch up to where we are today. So grab your Prismacolors and let's go. Welcome back. Are you ready to finish up our little cute mice? So let's start with our pear. We're going to put a little brown in just where we want some blemishes and around the little stem. Now we're going to go over the entire pear in this yellow chartreuse. This is going to be our base layer, and it's going to allow the pear to be light even after we shadow it. Because if we color it just this color, it's kind of bright and it really kind of pops off the page. So we want to be able to temper that down and desaturate it, but still have it read, yellow chartreuse. So next I'm going to put just regular chartreuse in on the darker side where it's in shadow and not over the entire pear, just kind of on this right hand side and a little around the top. Now next up we're going to go in with lime peel, which is a more desaturated green, but we're still in that same kind of limey color, right? We still have that same overall vibe. We're not adding olive green or forest green or anything like that. It's just a more desaturated green. Now I'm keeping that white spot as my highlight. Now I still feel like it is too popping off the page. So we're going to go in with our sepia and we're going to do a very light layer over the top of this pear where it's in the shadow and where we added our lime peel. Now we're going to go over it with the sepia. And by doing this, some pears are kind of more brownish anyway, but this is more like where it's in shadow. Now I do a fair amount around the top here. Now the hard part is keeping it all kind of smooth and not getting, we don't want any dark marks of brown because we want that yellowish tone to kind of shine through it. So at no point do we want it to just become sepia. We want those base layers shining through. But you can see now just adding that little bit of brown kind of makes it fit in with the rest of the page. Before it was just too bright, right? So this is kind of one way of keeping your page cohesive is by making sure that you don't have any one thing unless you want it to be a focal point. In this case, our focal point is really our little mice. And it's really hard with all of the conflicting food to not lose sight of them. So by toning the colors down a little bit, that's one way to do it. Now I still feel like we still have plenty of color on this page. But I really like how this turned out. Now I'm just kind of deepening up the brown and deepening up my shadows a little bit here as well. The places where no light would get. But I'm not bringing this tone all the way into the pear. Now, in another picture, this pear might look dirty or dingy, but it's kind of tucked back, and I think it works with this picture, personally. Now, I felt like the highlight was a little too white, so I went ahead and brought back in our yellow chartreuse, but then skimmed it again with our sepia tones. So, like this whole page, this is a personal choice and a back and forth. And then I was like, no, I think I got too much brown going on. And so I just kind of kept going back and forth with different colors, not being afraid to erase. And then you move on. Now I'm using the same greens that I've used throughout the entire thing. There's probably five different greens that I used. And I wanted this strawberry to look a little unripe up here at the top, just for a little interest. Plus it's going to kind of tie in a little bit of the lighter tones, like from the onion and the mushroom and the pear. And I chose poppy red because it's much more orange red. So in unripe strawberries up at the top, it's definitely a little bit more of that orangey red. Now right now it looks a little stripy, but I'm just getting the first layers of colors on. And then I'm going to move into this carmine red. Now to me, carmine red is more of a pink red. And it's a little more translucent, and that's kind of what I wanted before I bring in the overall red of the strawberry. I think when you combine colors like this, it just gives everything a little more depth and a little more interest than when you just pick one color and you grab crimson red and you go, yep, that's what color I want the strawberry to be. Now overall, when you look at the strawberry, the majority of the strawberry is probably going to read pretty close to crimson red, but because I have that poppy red at the top and the pinky red or the carmine red down lower, it just gives it a little bit more interest. And then I go in with this darker red, and once again on the lower parts we're going to go a little darker. And then we're going to leave some of that other up at the top. We're not going to take the dark red all the way to the top, because up there at the top is where it's transitioning into our cream and green color. Now I'm going in with yet even another darker red. I love Tuscan red for this. To me, it is the perfect shade for red. I just like how it darkens everything up without making really huge changes to the overall color. Now I'm back to that pinker red for the bottom there. But you can see I'm really starting to get more of a strawberry color. Now, when you're all done with this, you could definitely go in with a yellow Posca and put in the little seeds. You could be more aggressive about, or, using your markers at the end. I chose not to with this one, but this would be a good place to use them, and I very often do. I just didn't this time. just like how it turned out without them. I just didn't really feel like there was anything that, I don't know, really needed it. Probably the seeds could definitely use it. The problem is once you put it somewhere, then a lot of times you're tempted to put it somewhere else, and I don't know. I just felt like it was okay the way it was. So while I was talking, I blended out the top there. Now I am going to go around each of these seeds with sepia. Now you could also use one of your cool grays, like a 90% cool gray, or even a warm gray. But generally speaking, they have a little bit of a darker ring around a little yellow or white seed. Now I'm going to finish up the little stems, which I don't know why I didn't do them all at once. I think because I moved in from my lime peel directly into my strawberry and then, squirrel, just grabbed the reds and went. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our little grapes. So I'm basing these in this bright yellow chartreuse. And I'm basically going to go over all the grapes exactly the same way with this color. Okay, so next we're going to go in with chartreuse, and we're going to do the lower, maybe third of these grapes with our chartreuse. Now this is giving it a little more depth and just darkening kind of where the shadows are. So just all in the little deep spots there. Now next up, we're going to go in with lime peel. And this is going to add even more shading, right? Because this is a little darker. Now I'm putting that basically on that lower third, maybe not going quite as high as I did with the chartreuse. Do you guys remember that commercial where the lady's talking to the guy and he's fishing and she's just like blah 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 blah, and they say chartreuse is a funny word? I don't know why I thought that commercial. I think of it every time I hear the word chartreuse. Anyway, back to our color. Now I'm going in with spring green and kind of very lightly glazing the entire grape with the spring green, because I just felt like the grapes weren't the right color. Grapes are a little greener, right? And so I'm going over the entire grape with this spring green. And I'm using a very light pressure. And now these grapes are starting to me, look a little more like grapes. Now I kind of missed that one, I think. Imagine that. You guys were all shocked, right? Now I'm going back and deepening those shadow areas where I put the chartreuse and the lime peel. I'm going back in with the spring green and using ever so slightly more pressure. So I don't mean bear down on the pencil, but I'm not glazing it quite as light as I was. Now it's okay that I missed that grape. It's going to give it just a little more color, and I think I noticed it because I went over the entire grape. Sometimes you just make those adjustments. Now all these grapes should be a little different because they're grapes, right? They're not, duplicate copies of each other. So here I am shuffling my deck. So now I'm going into the highlighted areas, so those areas on the top, and I'm just adding a little bit of this cream. Now, if you don't want your grapes to have more of a yellow, you could just skip that step and just go in with the white. Because I did find that once I put that cream in there, I was like, well, that's a little too warm. I want it a little paler with the white. Now, using our French gray, just like I did with a lot of the other things, I'm adding a little bit of a glaze of a browner tone, kind of antiquing it, if you will. Just kind of pushing back on the brightness of the picture. Because when you get that many different colors in a picture that are all popping off the page, it's a little much for your eyeballs. They're screaming for a little relief. And I found that if I use these tones over everything, it unifies the colors a little bit. And it doesn't make it seemingly so different. So even though we have these chartreuse green, right, with this bright red. Okay, so this is sienna brown. I'm sorry I don't have the card up right now. But I'm just kind of lightly distributing it a little bit. Not a lot. And then this is sand. But I'm just I'm assuming this is a pomegranate. And here I realize I'm out of camera and being a dork. So sorry about that. But the pomegranate kind of has that brownish orange top to it. So I'm not trying to cover everything. I'm just trying to kind of give the feel of a texture by leaving it a little uncovered here and there. And then blending out with the sand to give it kind of that more of a yellow cast on the tips. And then going in where the shadows would be, kind of inside, and then along the bottom edge, I'm using this dark brown. Now you'll notice that this Tuscan red we've used in a couple of other things. Now this is going to be a little different because it's going to be more red-orange. But that's okay. By using the same colors as base layers, it helps unify, as opposed to, let's say I had just used dark purple on the plums and then grab this magenta for the pomegranate. They wouldn't feel as cohesive as by creating the colors using the base layer of the the Tuscan Red. It's also acting as my shadow. It's my shadow layer. It's bringing that little bit of depth and a deepening of this pomegranate and magenta so that they're not bright. And then just like we glazed those grapes with the French gray, I'm using this sepia to kind of glaze this pomegranate. And now as I go over it with the Tuscan Red, with that sepia behind it, it gives it a really rich red color, but a real dark color without changing the, I mean, how do I want to put it? If I just put 4 layers of Tuscan Red, it really wouldn't deepen the value. It would become more saturated, but it wouldn't change the value. And the value is kind of what we want to change here. We want those darker values in the shadows. But I don't want the whole pomegranate to read brown either. So by going over it with that Tuscan Red, it becomes more of a red tone. Now I'm kind of bringing that up into that stem a little bit. And now I believe that is mineral orange. I couldn't quite decide what I wanted to do with this towel. I didn't really want it to be white, but I didn't really want to give it like I thought about making it red, but I felt like it might be a little too punchy. So I decided in the end that I wanted to use these French grays. So I'm taking my darkest one and going in where it's kind of folded on the inside there. We have a squirrel outside tormenting Ellie, but she can't see him. She can just hear him. So she's not amused. She's like, what is that? So hopefully she won't start chatting us up here. I think she's more annoyed because it's her nap time. She's like, just leave me alone and let me sleep. I'm sure none of us can relate to that feeling at all. Are you guys nappers? I never used to be able to nap at all. And then when I had my stroke, I had to nap and it almost killed me. It really bothered me a lot. I resented having a nap. I no longer have to nap most of the time, but occasionally I still get hit with it and I have to. But luckily, those are fewer and farther between. But those first few years were pretty rough. I don't know why. I was just always, I think it was just a change for me. I never had a problem if other people wanted to nap, but I got things to do. And when I'm napping, I can't do those things. I feel like there's always more things that I want to do than I have time to do. And so I kind of resent the whole sleeping thing. And before my stroke, I only needed about 5.5 hours of sleep to function very well. Now I'm more like a 7 or 8 kind of girl, and I find that a little annoying. I know I should be grateful because it could be a lot worse. And so forgive my whining. I think everything in our life, it's all relative, right? It's what we know and what we're used to and what is different for us. And when those big changes happen, sometimes it can be hard to adapt a little bit. And obviously, that wasn't the only thing, but that was a big one for me, to the point that I ended up having to change careers. And, in retrospect, maybe that was a good thing because it led me down a path that ultimately ended here. Not all because of that, but some of it so that I could help my mom and that kind of stuff. But I am grateful. I feel like God always has a plan. We don't always know what it is, and we're impatient, right? And I feel like I don't always like the phrase things happen for a reason, but I do believe that some things that seem like a bad thing can lead you to better things. But it really sucks when you're dealing with it. Okay, so philosophical Wendy is now going to take a back seat here. So I decided I wanted to pull in the purples down into this bottom to kind of balance out. I've got those eggplants and the plums. So I thought maybe I just felt like it'd be too much green to do green grapes. I have the pomegranate there, so I really didn't want red grapes. So, like we did the plums, I'm using that indigo blue as kind of my shadowy base layer, and then I'm going over it with dark purple. I really like indigo blue and Tuscan red for deepening reds and purples. I just do. You could have used a Tuscan red here if you wanted the grapes to be more on the red side. But I like how indigo blue gives them that purplish tone, the blue purple tone, right? Now, now I'm going to go in with the Tuscan red, and just in the darkest shadows is where I'm putting this. Well, I guess, all right, I lied. So I am bringing it out, but we don't want to do the entire grape with it. I think it's important with grapes that you leave some highlights when you're using really dark tones like this. You don't notice it as much with green grapes, but you're definitely going to notice it with these grapes. If you want them to look at all translucent or not like like bouncy balls or something, like really opaque, you want a lot of variance in color. So that's why you see me leaving these irregular shaped light spots. I will fill them in with other colors as we go along, but it just gives each grape some individuality and some interest. It's really hard to work on the bottom of the page. I would have done better to put a piece of paper. I have wax paper or some sort of paper behind there so that I'm protecting the other page, but a piece of actual white paper there gives your pencil someplace to slip off to. But I was lazy and I didn't want to grab one. So here I'm using Dahlia Purple, which is a lighter purple. And I'm going to go ahead and go over a lot of those white space, but not all. I want to leave some. Now, I will tell you, if you wanted this to be more realistic, you should probably put all of your highlights in the proper place. You know, if you got your light coming from the top left-hand side, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have the highlight right there in the center. But here's the thing, guys. This is for me. It's for you guys. I think coloring should be enjoyable, and as I learn more, I would certainly teach you more, but I don't always get caught up in that, like, what's the right way to do this? This is just kind of how I do it. Now, I'm kind of blending it all out here with this pink, and I'm using this to do my blending and almost like a burnishing stroke, but not, I'm not bearing down a lot, but I am definitely using it to blend. But you can see it really brightens up that dahlia pink and makes it much brighter. So you could use a different color pink, you could use the purple, you could use whatever you wanted. You could even use a white here to blend this all out. But I decided I didn't really like the pink, so I have switched to the dahlia. I just felt like the pink going over all of those, well, okay, I lied. I guess I do continue to blend out with the pink. I thought I was switching. I guess I just wanted to fill in that one spot, so just ignore everything I say. That's kind of the downside to voiceover. However, trust me on this, it wouldn't flow as well if I did it as I was coloring. There would be monumental long pauses and incoherent sentences. I do that enough where I don't complete a sentence. So apologies, but I'm going over everything with this black grape though, because I do feel like it is a little bit bright. Especially that one right there in the forefront. Holy cow. That thing's like magenta colored. But watch how this black grape really will tone it back. I love how that is, because then you get that magenta color still kind of shining through. And you'll see this even more if you use pencils like polychromos. Now, I get hung up because I really like the color palette of Prismacolors. And they're the ones that I'm most familiar with. I will try and do more with polychromos because they're great pencils to work with. But I gotta say, I do love my Prismacolors. And I feel like you can layer just fine with Prismacolors. And you know me, I'm not super light-handed. It doesn't take me 40 layers to get somewhere, because I am kind of impatient. So to me, Prismacolors work, but I will try and mix it up a little more. I know that lately I've really used a lot of Prismacolor. I think part of that is there's a lot of stress in my life right now, and I've been really pulled towards helping my mom. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that I've been worried about her. I've had some extra responsibilities, and so I kind of fall back on what's easy. But going forward, I am working on a couple of different techniques to show you guys that I think are going to be fun and just give us another alternative. So, and I've got to get going on the Africa book. You guys picked that book, but I did want to do one more color along in this book, especially for Valentine's Day. I just felt like it was fitting to do this. So once again, my fallback is I didn't want white, so I opted for this French gray. Because you can leave a lot of it white, but by having a little bit of that French gray in there, it looks colored and finished, but still is very light. So I'm going to leave you to this little bit because it's pretty self-explanatory, and I'll be back momentarily. Okay, so for the menus, I decided on this warm gray 90%. It's just a hair off of black. If you don't have this, you could definitely use black. Probably should have left the music on because this is pretty self-explanatory too. Now this little corner, I'm going to go a little bit darker just so that visually you see that it's open, but it's a separate piece. Alternatively, you could have made that piece like a paper color, like a cream or sand or French gray, something that would indicate that opening, that the menu is open, and it might even make more sense. I just did it dark black. I do believe that I go back at the very end off camera and put, I think it's a little bit of sand, just a squiggle mark on in that little white rectangle, because I don't do it here. It's one of those little things. Wendy always has to forget something, and I noticed it when I was taking a picture, I believe. But I just want the blacks burnished a little bit. I want them to be a little more smooth and a little richer, but not quite as dark as that back piece. Now, I'm doing this way because I literally forgot to show you, or I lost the piece of footage where I drew in the ice for the glass. So I'm just doing little circles, and I'm using burnt sienna here to go around the edge and just kind of make this look like Coca-Cola or something, or some sort of mixed drink. And there I'm using like a dark brown, terracotta maybe, right here. It doesn't really matter because you could make it look like iced tea and use lighter colors. You could make it look like a yellow or green or whatever you want. But I wanted to mainly show you how I did the ice, and then I'm going to show you how I do the rest of the drinks here. So, sorry about that. But once again, you know, I drew the ice in the goldenrod, and then I'm using this sienna brown and then the darker brown to indicate that this is some sort of Coca-Cola or iced tea or a mixed drink or something like that. It was really weird. My camera just, that file for whatever reason corrupted. So I don't know if I maybe shut off my camera incorrectly during that segment or what, because it was only that one file. But I tried multiple ways to Tuesday to get it, and I couldn't. So here I'm just going around the outside of those numbers, and then I wanted to add a little bit of red because a lot of scales have that red line. Now you can see that red line's pretty intense, and I didn't like it, so I decided to erase it. And it worked out perfectly because when I erased it, it still stained the paper, but it still has that little bit of red, but not that in-your-face red, which is kind of what I wanted. So it worked out really well for me. You know, sometimes you get lucky. Now here, I am using Cool Gray 10%. You could use white, or you could use a Posca pen to do this, to put the little indicators that that's glass behind you. I did it this way I chose not to use any white Posca at all on this picture. It is a choice that I made. I mean, almost all of my pictures, I use a white Posca pen at the end to add the highlights to, I'd put little shine marks on the berries or on whatever. And I think it's because I used like the sepia tones and the French grays to kind of saturate everything that I don't know. I just visually decided I didn't want to do the white. You certainly can. There's no, no coloring police are coming after you. Do what you like. Make this picture yours. But in the end, I decided I was fine with how it turned out with just pencils. I am adding in a little bit of blue. To be fair, probably should have deepened the lower part of that window before I put the gray. But I didn't, so I had to do it this way. So I'm just going in between those gray marks. Just mainly at the bottom, I wanted it a little darker with it being a little lighter at the top of the window. Now, I very much wasn't digging how light the background was, so I just take my French pencils or the French grays, and I just, using the side, kind of go over everything. There's no awesome technique here. You could use a pan pastel, you could use whatever. I just wanted darker tones, and I feel like by kind of going on the side like that, it kind of lends a little bit of, loosely stucco, right? I probably should have done another layer just to smooth it all out, especially in that top left-hand corner. But I really wanted to get this out for you this weekend, and so, yeah. But anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. I'd love to see you again. And that's going to do it for this one. So until the next time, happy coloring. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.